Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. #Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Mark Metzler. Mark, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, my friend. Pleasure to be here.
It is always inspirational to learn from other people's hustle. That's what this podcast is all about. And I know you have a great story, so I can't wait to jump into it. Why don't you take us back to your upbringing, where you come from, what has inspired your hustle to where you are today?
Yeah, so I'll give you kind of a background. My father is an incredibly hardworking person, and I think that's where I get a lot of my drive and a lot of my motivation from. Like, the man's upset that he can't work tomorrow. Like, he's just an animal. He's been working 41 years as a diesel mechanic, and it's just all he ever wants to do is work. You know, he's one of those people that will work until the day he dies and probably a day after. So
I knew one of those. My dad was the same way. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's just a common trait among a lot of, I don't want to say hyper successful, but just successful people. I think you got to have that model when you're growing up. And so a lot of the values that I learned are from him, and a lot of the values that I learned about just how to treat people, how to approach people, how to just wake up every day and give it your all are from him. Now, obviously, I am not in the diesel mechanic field. He is. Both of my uncles are. My grandfather is a diesel mechanic, or was a diesel mechanic. But I decided to do something different with my life because I learned from watching them destroy their hands and destroy their bodies day in and day out. And they told me, don't do this. And while it would have been very, very easy, and I would have had a lot of things to take on as far as tools and knowledge and experience and, you know, entry into a lot of different opportunities, it was just not the life that I wanted to pursue. So back in 2018, 2019, give or take, I was working at a local body shop just for cash. And I enjoyed detailing. I enjoyed doing all those things, kind of just that customer service, salesy side of things. But I still love cars. I love cars day in, day out. It's just part of who I am. It's part of my brand. And I was detailing cars there, and I met my quote unquote supervisor, if you will. It was the boss's son, but he was pretty much the person who showed me the ropes at the body shop. And he was so interested in investing, and he had his house paid off. He had rental properties. He had everything set, ready to go, you know, lived a very frugal lifestyle. And I'm like, he knows what the hell he's doing. I was like, all right. So I learned a little bit from him, learned about investing, learned about rental properties a little bit, learned about tax advantages, 401ks, you name it. So I got into that. I decreased my expenses as much as possible, and quickly found out that my $650, $700 a week paychecks were never going to take me very far. You know, they're not going to afford the kind of cars that I want to drive. They're not going to afford the houses that I want to buy. So I'm like, all right, what do we do from here? And that led me into looking into a sales career, a strictly sales career, not like a sales service career, that detailing was. And so I looked into car sales. I looked into a few other things, and quickly I found that real estate sales was something that I would enjoy, and that it would be something that I would be good at. So I spent almost all of 2019 listening to podcasts and listening to YouTube videos and mindset work and sales training and you name it, to kind of learn the business while stacking up a sizable bank account so that I can have a cushion to go into the real estate game. From there, I went into real estate in December of 2019, about 2 weeks before Christmas. And as everyone who is listening to this knows, about 3 months later, the entire world shut down. And COVID just destroyed everything and forced everyone to be home. And I went, oh no. I was like, I quit my job. I was like, what am I supposed to do? I was like, I've got like 10 grand in my bank account. I was like, I can't live off this forever. So I had the option of either taking unemployment and getting the $600 a week that everybody else was getting, or pouring everything that I had and more into real estate and trying to build a business. And I saw that the greats in the industry were still doing deals and things were still getting done. So I'm like, all right, it's still possible. You know, the entire world hasn't really shut down. It's just very, very quiet and it's more difficult. So with that, I mean, I think I brought in like $5,000 in my first year in real estate. It was awful. But I started to build momentum and I started to build listings and deals that were in contract by the end of the year. And I think once you have your first deal, 2 or 3 in contract and you're at things rolling, you can't give up because people have now put your trust in you, especially if you have a listing. Once somebody entrusts you to sell their 9 times out of 10 largest asset, it's like you can't quit. So when I got my first big listing, I was like, this is it. I can't quit anymore. So there's no way back.
So I want to ask you about that. And I want to get back to another thing you said also, but I feel that the more I speak to people whose careers have clicked, there's this inflection point that's like, I could quit. And when people look back at that moment, they're like, had I quit, I would not have gotten this. Meaning the snowball is about to start rolling. And obviously hindsight is 2020. And if we could project the future, that would be great. But it's like, if you just keep going or just keep hustling at what you're doing and you're doing the right thing, it's not like you're, trying to become an NBA basketball player when you're look like me. You know what I mean? But it's like
Exactly.
that if you could put in the right work, even during a pandemic,
You're not delusional.
Right, exactly. If you're not delusional and you put in the work, that snowball moment will come and then it will accelerate.
Correct.
So was that a moment for you? Was that just like you had no other choice? Was that when you got into it, did you realize like this is it and I could get derailed by this pandemic, but I'm not going to? Or was it just like there's a bump in the road and better for it to happen early on in my career than being the guy who, his expenses are 10x and now desperately needs the listing, if you will?
Yeah. I mean, I think I tried to flip it the best I could when it happened and just say, I'm grateful that it's happening now and that I had so much downtime where I was almost forced to learn the business and forced to improve on my business and my sales skills and my branding and all that good stuff. Because if you're sitting at home and you have 18 hours a day or 16 hours a day to do nothing, it's like you might as well work on the business. There's times where I've joked with colleagues and I'm like, I kind of wish we had another shutdown so that I could fix a lot of the things that I got to fix on my business without anybody else, bothering me. So I think that allowed me to just really hone in on what I needed to do, what I wanted to do, and learn. The first few years in real estate, and I'm sure with a lot of other entrepreneurial, ventures, is just it's like grad school. You got to sit there and learn. I'm sure you didn't know what you were doing your first day selling insurance. And then all of a sudden you were like, you know what? I kind of know it now, but it probably came 2, 3, 4 years later when you were like, I really know what I'm doing. And I'm 4 years in and I feel like I'm still an amateur, still learning. There's still things that I need to learn, but it's like, I'm better than most.
100%. And I think what's fascinating about your story is that I can't help but think that the dedication and the grit and the grind and the hustle that you saw growing up from your father, grandfather, and uncles who were in the trades. And that's like, if you're going to do what you or I do, and some days we can sit behind a desk and we don't have meetings, if you're not feeling up to it 100% or you don't want to go at it 100%, everybody has those days where they kind of just get by. Something tells me when you're a diesel mechanic, there is no just getting by, meaning like, what does that mean? You have to use your hands.
Yeah.
You have to solve this problem. You can't just sit behind a desk and answer the emails you have to and not answer the emails you don't. And I feel like that even though you didn't go that route, there's something there inherent in you or what you learned that when the tough time came, you were like, meaning what I'm saying is there's no such thing as sleeping in. Like you could have just slept in, but no.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. The lesson learned where I think you're going with this is like, you have to continue moving forward. The work still has to get done no matter how slow you go. So like on the days where you're not feeling it or where you're not as motivated as you want to be, it's like, okay, how can I continue to push the envelope, continue to move things forward? Even if I'm not moving at light speed today, let me just at least get something done or at least, maintain. Because you know it as well as I do. If you take a day off of branding, if you take a day off of work, if you take a day off of calls, you just moved your business backwards.
100%.
And so the object of the game is just to, and I like to gamify business as much as I can. The object of the game is just to either maintain or move forward. And so the days where you're not feeling it, the standard is just to maintain. You can't move backwards.
You got to get the
at-bats. You can't allow
at-bats.
yourself to move backwards.
You got to get the at-bats. Even if your wrist is hurting, you got to get the at-bats because you never know what's going to happen. And just by getting in the batter's box, I like sports analogies. You probably like, and I think that there's something there. But I think that when we talk about hustling and how we don't realize, a lot of what I'm learning in meeting successful people like yourself through this podcast is that a lot of times you don't realize what's being implanted in us and what becomes part of our DNA. True. And like, I feel like growing up watching people knowing that that was like real grit, like real. So it was like, my father, he should rest in peace. You mentioned your father, obviously on a happier note, but like the, he never took a day off. He took days off for, Jewish holidays and this and that. But other than that, it was like, even when he was getting older, he was answering literally emails from his hospital bed. And some people say that's crazy. I say that the way he was able to get to 82 years old, a successful business, and by the way, have his mind stay as sharp as it was, and physically stay sharp as it was, is his bed never saw 10 a.m. He never saw 10 a.m. in bed. That doesn't mean that he was up at 5 like he was when he was 30, but like,
Yeah.
get up, do your job, even if you don't have something hitting today. Get up, get to your desk, do what you got to do, and that will create the opportunities. And I think I feel like that's in your DNA. So you definitely have a leg up there. And the fact that by the way, the fact that you took that messaging, a lot of people might have said, I'm separate than that.
Yeah, I'm 28 years old. A lot of people that are my age I speak to that are friends or colleagues or old classmates or something like that, they think like, oh, well, I've earned my time off. You got to, relax a little bit in your 20s and enjoy life. And I'm like, you can enjoy life when you've earned it. And the truth is you haven't earned it yet. And so I'm on a pursuit to earn it. I want to earn my time off. I want to earn my relaxation. Like tomorrow, 99% of the world is 99% of America is taking off for Thanksgiving. And it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, did you earn it? Because if you didn't earn it, you're going to spend all day tomorrow anxious and you're going to be anxiety filled and you're going to be sitting there like, oh, I didn't answer that email. I didn't do this. I should have sent out that, that postcard, or I should have done one more mailer, or did I call that lead? And you're like, you know what? If I do all of the work that I have to do every single day and every single week, then I will earn my time off and I will earn that relaxation and it'd be worth more at the end of the day. And I think that's just one of the things that's lost in a lot of the people that don't like get it, like we talked about earlier.
100%. I want to get back to something, just a question I had as you were telling your story. And that is, you said that your father and your grandfather and uncles told you not to go into the trade.
Correct.
And I wonder, were you convinced of that? Or did you feel like they were protecting you? Did you feel like they thought that you couldn't do it? Did you feel like they wanted a better life for you, quote unquote, whatever it is? Meaning like, because by the way, you saw people that were successful. It wasn't like you saw, as you said, obviously everything is relative, but what I mean is that you saw someone who worked hard and whose life has panned out through that hard work to maybe not being Jeff Bezos, but being comfortable. And so it's almost like that was the easiest path for you, even though some people would say, as you're saying, they thought it would be hard to get into that kind of a trade. But I feel like for you being third generation, it's like, how do you balance that when they're having those conversations with you?
Yeah. So it was definitely coming from a place of, I want a better life for you. And I know that for certain because they've said that, when you work with your hands and you work on your hands and knees, or you're turning wrenches every day for a living, it's very, very demanding on the body. And, they've told me a million times, just like, you don't want this life. You don't want to spend the $100,000 in tools just to make a decent wage. Like diesel mechanics, they're not exactly underpaid, but they're not overpaid. Whereas, somebody like you or I can make a good amount of money for what we do, and it's not that physically demanding. So it definitely came from a place of, I want a better life for you. It's definitely more demanding to do something totally foreign. I think it's more mentally taxing, and it's more of an exponential growth versus like a linear growth as far as career and as far as income goes. Whereas, if I went to go turn wrenches, I could probably make $30, $40 an hour tomorrow and have no problem with that, with the amount of knowledge that I know and then get a raise with inflation every year. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, I still got to put food on the table. I still have to buy new tools. I still have to take care of myself and build some sort of safety net in my bank account. And that's just not a thing that I thought would actually happen. And I've been proven right. Whereas, the entrepreneurial route with the real estate sales and all of that good stuff, it was very, very poor at the start. And I made little to no money for the first year. And then the next year I made a little bit of money. Next year I made a little bit more. And then it starts to really, really take off in that, like I said, exponential way. So it's a sacrifice for sure. But I would say that this was the more mentally taxing and the more mentally difficult route versus the long going, physically demanding, difficult route that with the trades would be.
Do you ever regret it?
No, not at all. Not in the slightest. And I will answer that 1,000 times over.
Okay, I'm just curious. I think that that's, I can imagine when the world shuts down and you're like, still people still need their diesel serviced, So
Yeah,
nobody. There was a time when people didn't. Obviously, after that, there was some sort of there was a somewhat of a real estate boom, but there was a time when
correct.
people were obviously very concerned just about how deals were going to happen. Nobody was moving; everyone was stuck. So that's why I asked that question. Has there been a pivotal moment? You said you're 28, so you make me feel old, but
Trust me, I feel old.
that's right, because you're not doing manual labor. No, I'm just kidding. But you mentioned that you were working in the auto body shop. You mentioned that you made this decision to then go to the professions. You mentioned that there was a pandemic that you hustled through.
Hmm.
If I asked you to choose one pivotal moment in your career to date that got to that snowball rolling down the mountain, what would it be?
I mean, the most pivotal moment that I can imagine is the day that I actually went for my license, got the license, interviewed at a number of different brokerages. But the same day I actually got my license, I interviewed with my first brokerage that I actually joined. So a lot happened that day. I got the approval in the room from that principal broker, and he was just like, "Yeah, come join us. You're going to be great." Okay, great. Everything's fine. And within, I think, a few days, I think I signed with them. I signed all the paperwork on Black Friday, 2019. And then like the next day or two, I quit my job. So I would say that's like a very pivotal moment just for me, just because it was like, I finally burned the boats and finally went into something that I knew would potentially make me happy, because I wasn't happy doing body work by any means. It was not a fun time. It's not a fun career. And I knew I wouldn't be happy doing diesel mechanics and stuff like that forever. So yeah, I would say that's the most pivotal moment, is just the one moment where I actually said, okay, we're going all the way in. We're burning the boats. We're quitting the job. I sold my truck. I had a phenomenal 2003 Chevy Silverado SS. It was lowered, had different wheels on it, all the work done to it. It's everything I ever wanted from 18 to like 24, I think, when I bought and sold that truck. I bought it in March, and I think I sold it in November of the same year.
Wow.
So I had a very small taste of like everything I wanted, and I was like, it's still not enough. I'm still not happy. And so I ended up selling it, taking the profits that I had out of it, and that fueled my real estate career for the next year and just fueled me. I needed food on the table. So I would say that 30-day period is probably the most pivotal moment, because so much changed, and it was, like I said, burn the boats.
Do you think that part of what led to your success now is the fact that you did jump right into the deep end? Like
1,000%.
you literally sold the truck and said, I'm in. Like, I'm tossing my uniform, buying some new clothes, getting rid of the truck, getting maybe a Vespa or like a motorbike, whatever, I don't know, or a bike or something.
Yeah, I got a Honda.
Like getting a Honda, but I think that there's something to the fact that if you have no plan B, and this is something that I believe that plan B's, everyone says you should have a plan B and you should have a backup plan. I think that just creates mediocrity. I think that if
Correct.
you don't have a plan B, that doesn't mean you can't be passionate about other things or have hobbies. I'm just saying, if you have a professional plan B, that means that there's some part of you that thinks the plan A is going to fail. And so when you were doing the mechanic work, your plan B was to do something, on the profession side and the real estate side. Once you jump into that, it's like, how could I ever think of two things at once? So I feel like there's something there.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of like a safety school. Like, I knew I could always go back. I just knew I would never be happy there, but it would still be considered a failure in my mind. Like, if I did real estate and I didn't make it, and I went back to go turning wrenches or doing body work or doing detailing or whatever I was doing, it would just be the worst thing in the world. I couldn't imagine facing my friends and family and girlfriend or anything and saying I didn't make it. It just was not an option for me. So I was going to find a way to make it work. I went into probably $30,000 worth of credit card debt to make it work. I did not care, find a way.
So was it the drive to succeed or the fear of failure that propelled you more?
I think it's both, but I think it's like an 80-20. I think it's definitely the fear of failure is the major contributor there. And then obviously it's like the have you heard this? You've probably seen it because I know you're like Alex Hormozy. The conversation between him and Chris something, where he talks about the cat and cheese.
Yeah.
Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
Okay. So like the fear of failure was the cat,
right,
and the success was the cheese. And it was just like, okay, cool. You're in a tube. It's just like, you're going to pull hard to get the things that you want, but the fear of failure is going to make you continue to pull hard. And if anybody's listening and doesn't know what they're talking about, go look that up. It's Jordan Peterson talks about it, but Chris Williamson, I think, and Alex Hormozy talk about it. But it's definitely the fear of failure that was the major contributor of motivation and drive, because I just was not going to be going back to that life. I would do whatever it took.
That's super fascinating to me because I feel like most people wouldn't admit that it was the fear of failure. And obviously I appreciate your honesty, but I feel like
Yeah,
that there's something there in that people don't oftentimes can't concretize what their motivations are. And I think that it's incredible that you were able to do that and get through the difficult times, regardless of the reason, because then you see it was really driving towards success. It just happened to have masked itself in the fear of failure.
correct. Yeah, I think everybody has a fear of failure somewhere hidden in them, because nobody wants to admit that they're a failure or appear like a failure to anybody else. And 9 times out of 10, it's not like everybody else. It's usually like family or friends or, some sort of social circle. But nobody ever wants to go back and say, I failed. No one, whether they admit it or not. It's like, oh, I want the Lambo. It's like everyone wants the Lambo. Okay. But going to your mom or your dad and saying, I didn't make it, that's the worst thing in the world. And that's all well and good if you say, I didn't make it, but I'm going to try again. It's different. But if you say, I didn't make it, I'm just going to go back to, flipping burgers at McDonald's, it's like you lost. And that was not going to happen for me.
What did they say when your family and friends and closest friends, when you picked a seemingly insane, not, then COVID comes and they're like, dude, you could have like picked anything else besides,
Yeah,
there's no open houses. Like, I don't know what you're
exactly. No open houses, no cold calling, no nothing. It's just like, okay, good luck. My father had a lot of questions. My father's always kind of let me do my own thing in a broad sense. I've always been able to just go do my own thing. He'll sometimes check in and be like, are you okay? Are you crazy? But overall, he'll let me run and, have a pretty long leash. Friends were pretty supportive. I feel like most friends are always going to be like, yeah, go do the thing, start that business. Great. And it's nice to have that support, but in the back of their mind, they're just like, is he really going to try this right now? That's crazy. And through COVID, it was just like, are you okay? Do you need food? I can donate cans of soup.
I think it's interesting because you said that your father pushed you not to go into his trade, but then you said that he had a lot of questions.
Yeah, because it's at the same time, he always wanted me to have like a safe career. And I think that's what every father and every parent ever wants for their child, is a safe, reliable career. So like, I know a lot of times he pushed me towards like Metro North or working for the state or being like a correctional officer, something with phenomenal benefits, really good pay, a ton of overtime,
Good retirement,
all the work in the world.
and you're set up. And you're set up. You do your job, do a little overtime, and you're set.
Precisely. And so that was kind of like, don't do what I do, but go into another safe trade that pays better with better benefits, but less risk, and I think that was the goal for him, for me. And so when I tried this with all of the risk in the world and no benefits and no retirement, it was like, are you sure?
I told you not to be on your hands and knees, but I didn't tell you to
Yeah.
get a real estate license right before a pandemic.
Exactly. And so I distinctly remember a moment. It was probably like June or July of 2020. So it was like still masks, still like, I think the world just kind of opened back up. Like you could go into stores, but it was just like, it was gloves and masks and nonsense. And he was just like, do you have like a plan B if this doesn't work out? And I said, no. And I distinctly remember saying, no, plan B suffocates plan A.
I love that. And I feel like he probably respected that.
Yeah. And I think so. I mean, I honestly don't think he said anything back to that, because I remember that moment pretty well, but I do remember saying plan B suffocates plan A.
I love that.
And that was, it was never an option for me to fail.
I love that. And I love the fact that this is all about hustling and staying at it. And I'm telling you, I think it's in your genes, that the grit is in your genes. So like, even though it seems, and I think that from the outside, someone looks at it and says your life and your career will look so different than your father's or your grandfather's. But I think that people can tell who has that grit and who has that hustle, and anyone who can start a real estate career during a pandemic hustle just as much as the guy who's maybe not physically, but hustle just as much as the guy who's a diesel mechanic. So I love that.
Yeah, 100%. Hard work, it's not subject just to one career or one path. Nobody ever died from hard work. It's just, I think it's something that we should all strive for, is just to work hard and do everything that we can to be the best that we can, or the best that we can be at whatever we're doing. If you're taking tolls for a living at the Golden Gate Bridge, I think you should be the best damn toll taker that ever lived. or at least you should strive for it. Or maybe you're a number two, you're Robin to someone's Batman. Like, you should be the best damn Robin there is.
And nobody can ever take that away from you. If you have that, nobody can ever take that away from you. Money can come and go,
Correct.
sales can come and go, easy success, difficult success. But if you have that in you and you keep going and you realize that, then you'll see success. Because as you said, when there's no plan B, you have no choice but to be successful. If you have no plan B,
Correct.
that means you're going to be successful. You might give up before the success comes. But had you waited it out and done what you were supposed to do and kept hustling, then you would have kind of definitely seen that success, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, I think if anybody sticks at it long enough, they will, and they're not delusional, they will find improvement in their business and in their career, and they will find success, whatever that may mean to them. Sometimes it's material, sometimes it's family time, sometimes it's money, income, status, whatever it may be, they will find it. But they have to, nobody was born at the top. Even like the Rothschild kids, like you have to learn your role and you have to learn how to be the best.
I love what you said, that no one ever died from hard work, but I also feel like nobody ever really saw, except for serious inherited wealth, no one ever saw real success without hard work either.
Correct. So, and I think, and if I handed you $100 million at 18 years old, you'd be like, cool, I'm the king. I can do whatever I want. This means nothing, And so even if you went out there and you bought the fastest car in the world, you'd be like, I didn't earn this. And I think it means less. I think it truly means less if you can just buy it and it wasn't yours, or if you can use it and it's not yours.
100%.
Whereas if you saved every penny to buy that car or to buy that house or something like that, and you go to bed that night in that house, you're like, I bought this. I earned this.
You put that engine on the first time and it sounds sweeter than anything could ever be.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where you really, really appreciate it. If you can afford like a $500 steak dinner with your friends or something like that, and it's $200, $300, $400 a plate, and it's just like, okay, great. But if you made the money to get there and you did the proper work, that steak is going to taste so much better than if somebody else sat there and bought it for you.
I love that. And that's a great way to close your hustle. Your hustle is inspirational. Your story is inspirational. I love the family story. I love how you put your spin on it, but kept the grit going. To me, you're one of those definitions of keep hustling. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it.
We ask all of our guests before we close to leave us with their favorite timely or lifetime inspirational quote and why it means so much to them. So I will turn the floor over to you.
As far as a favorite quote, it's very difficult, but I did pull one up while we were talking, and it is relevant to our conversation, and it is one of my favorites. I keep it saved in my photo gallery, and I'll read it off to you. It's from James Clear. You don't need to catch every break if you're willing to keep trying. Every winner has an archive of losses, but each attempt creates the chance for a victory. You need to be patient, but not passive. Active patience. And I think that just sums up the entire conversation.
100%. 100%. That is the very definition of keep hustling. Thank you for inspiring me, and I know inspiring our listeners. To our listeners out there, we'll put all Mark's contact and socials. Make sure you follow him. He's a good follow. His brand is out there. It's great. And his hustle is inspirational. So thank you for being here, Mark.
Thank you for having me, my friend.
This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good. And of course, always keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.